This is going to be kind of a story time sort of thing about something really awful and creepy that happened a couple days ago. I thought it might be interesting for people, kind of a slice of life about what it's like to be a massage therapist. Because every massage therapist at one point or another encounters creepy people. I've been a massage therapist for about 20 years, and it's not an overwhelming problem, but it has happened a handful of times that I've had to deal with creeps. It's really awful. And it hadn't happened in about 10 years, and so it really kind of surprised me. And it was just as awful as it ever was in the past. As I was processing this and thinking about it, I remembered one creepy guy from my past. I was in my 20s. I had just finished massaging a guy, and he was, pretty normal, pretty well behaved. But after the massage, we were chatting. He reached out his hand to my face, to the side of my face, and just went like this. And he said, "So pretty." It was just like the creepiest thing. And I froze because that's my reaction in difficult situations. I wish I was a fight or a flight person, but I am a freeze person. And it's something that I really don't like about myself. It's become an inside joke because I told my partner this story when it happened. And every once in a while, my partner will stare at me, look at me deeply in my eyes, and then rub his finger down my face and say, "So pretty." It's like really super creepy. So anyway, that's kind of funny. It was not funny at the time. It was awful. So a couple of days ago, I encountered a creep. It was really terrible. And it hadn't happened in 10 years. And so it really caught me off guard. And I was starting to think it just wasn't going to happen anymore. I mean, massage therapy has changed a lot in my lifetime. For one thing, it's really legitimized. It's really legitimate here in the state where I live. Massage therapists take it seriously, and clients tend to take it seriously. They know that it's not a sexual service, and they know that most of the massage therapists in this state are above board. We have to take continuing education, we take boundaries and ethics classes, and we have to renew our license every 2 years. Most of the massage therapists here just are not going to put up with that bullshit. And also, I thought because I was older, because I'm 47 now, that people just weren't going to fuck with me. When you get to middle age, you just aren't as fuck withable. And, not as sexually appealing either. You're not a naive 20-year-old that maybe wouldn't be as skilled at navigating that kind of bullshit. And so people just don't fuck with you. But there's a certain kind of creepy guy that I want to talk about. And this kind of creep seems to not be really even motivated by sex, or it doesn't even matter if the target of their creepiness is young and attractive. It doesn't matter if they are attracted to that person. It's more about pushing boundaries and backing someone into a really uncomfortable corner. These creeps are insidious, amping up the creepiness slowly over time by imperceptible degrees so that you can't really tell if they're being creepy. You can't really put your finger on any one thing. They're just doing it really, really slowly so that you have to give them the benefit of the doubt. They just ratchet up the creepiness over time until it gets blatantly inappropriate. And I have encountered creeps like this a few times in my career. So for them, I think the motivation is just pushing boundaries to see how far they can go. I don't think it's really even about sex. It's just about making someone feel uncomfortable. So I contrast this type of creep with other types of creeps that I've encountered that I'm much more comfortable with because they're easy to deal with. They're more direct. So a few times in my career, I've gotten phone calls from men, and sometimes they even sound a little nervous. And they say, "I don't really know how to ask you this, and I don't want to make you feel uncomfortable, but do you provide happy endings?" So it's a very direct question. I remember this happening 2 different times. It was just even kind of fun for me. They're on the telephone. It's not face to face, so it's easier. And I just said, "Oh, thank you so much for asking. No, I don't do that." It was just a good opportunity for me to be assertive and also stay really grounded and calm and say, "No, I don't do that," but make it kind of fun. "Oh, thank you so much for asking. No, I don't do that." And also, I think you'll find that's pretty rare in this state because most most of the massage therapists are above board. It's annoying to be asked, but at least the way they did it was direct. They asked a question, I said no. But it wasn't this like creepy pushing boundaries over time, getting their claws in and ratcheting up the creepiness over time. And there have also been situations where clients had crushes on me. It's uncomfortable, but you just figure out how to deal with it. And one guy in particular, I saw him a couple times, and then it was at the end of one of the sessions, and he was very grounded and very calm, not threatening at all. And he just said, I like working with you, but I think I'm too attracted to you. I don't think that I can work with a massage therapist that I'm attracted to. And then suddenly in that moment, I was like, damn, that's hot. Like I hadn't even noticed, I hadn't even registered is this guy attractive or not? But it was just he was grounded and embodied and just speaking his truth, in a very grounded, mature, direct way. And, I never saw him again, but I was just like, wow, that's an adult. That's how you deal with that situation. You just deal with it directly. And so that's what's so annoying about my freeze response, because you can see in those two examples I gave, I respected the men who were direct with me. But when I am facing a creepy client, I freeze, and it's hard for me to be direct. I just want to get out of the situation. I'll email the client later and tell them I'm not going to see them anymore, but it's really hard for me to just in the moment be direct and say, hey, don't do that. Like the guy touching my face, a different massage therapist would just swat the hand away and say, don't touch me. And I didn't do that. I froze. And it's something I don't like about myself. That's just how I react in those situations. So the client recently was creepy and I dumped him. I'm never going to see him again. But it took 6 appointments for him to ratchet up the creepiness enough for me to have something tangible to point to and say, no, I will not see you again. From the very first time that I saw him, I was on guard. I remember even when he got out of his car and the first time I saw his face, I had this moment where I felt like his face didn't match his voice because I had spoken to him on the phone, but he got out of his car and I remember my very first thought was I don't know about this guy. It was just a gut instinct. And it's hard to know when to trust the gut instinct because I also thought, well, I've been working a lot lately. Maybe I'm just kind of run down, feeling a little bit on guard, feeling a little bit resentful. Give the guy the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he's a great guy. I mean, you don't just look at someone's face and conclude that you don't like them. You have to be a little bit more open with people than that. But that was my first instinct was, I don't know about this guy. Throughout all the 6 times that I saw him, there were little things that happened every single time that made me feel that way. It made me think, be careful with this one. Keep your eye on this one. But he did nothing that I could point to and say, that's wrong, so I don't want to see you again. Until he did. So he did little things like he seemed to adjust his hips a lot when he was on the table. And I was thinking, is this guy grinding his dick against the table or is he just adjusting his pelvis? Because, that's normal. When you're laying down on your back or on your front, you might adjust your hips a little bit. But it just seemed like it wasn't constant, but it was just every once in a while. So, it seemed pretty normal, but it was just something about it kind of tuned me into that. And I was keeping an eye on him and watching him very closely. But he didn't do anything wrong. There's nothing wrong with adjusting your hips. And he was also really vocal, which is normal. But with him, it just was annoying. Just kind of, sometimes clients make noises because it feels good. They're just oh yeah, oh, that feels good. And a lot of clients will say oh, yep, that's a spot. You found it. And that feels totally normal. There's nothing creepy about it. But there was just something about his continuous vocalizations okay, I get the point. Yeah, it feels good. Some clients might think that I appreciate the feedback so that I know when I'm on the right track, they're feeling relaxed. But it was just way too excessive with this guy. Just the kind of sighing and oh yeah, that feels good. Oh God, that's so good. After a while, I was just shut the fuck up, dude. I was getting really annoyed. It's just annoying. It was too much. But again, he wasn't doing anything wrong. And sometimes people do that and it's totally innocent and it doesn't mean anything. They are just relaxed and they feel good. He also seemed to adjust his dick a lot. And that's another thing that happens and it's totally normal. And most of the time it just doesn't mean anything and it doesn't make me uncomfortable at all because in general, it's for practical purposes. So say if a client is face up and I'm massaging their right leg, sometimes they'll reach under and just grab their junk and deflect it over to the left. left, which makes sense. It's practical. So when you're massaging the leg, you're massaging the whole, the quadricep, and you go all the way up to this junction, and so I can understand if I was a guy and like my dick's over here, then I would just move it out of the way. The other thing is that I massage with my feet. I practice ashiatsu. That could maybe be a little bit scary for a guy if you're massaging his leg. And I had one client that I worked with for a long time, and we were actually friends, and he told me, when we first started doing this massage, I was kind of scared because I was like, is this chick gonna slip and like land a heel on my nutsack? So I could see how it could be kind of scary for a guy. They have these ridiculous appendages that are like flopping around everywhere that are, vulnerable to attack. And like, yeah, if a foot slipped and like landed on your nutsack, it would really hurt. So maybe they just instinctively like feel protective and want to make sure all that junk's out of the way so that they don't get injured. And by the way, I've never slipped and crushed a nutsack. I've never lost my balance and fallen off the table or anything like that. No one has ever gotten hurt. But I can imagine as a guy, you feel vulnerable. So it's totally normal to do that, to, just grab your junk and deflect it over the other side. And then when the therapist switches to the other leg, you just deflect it back the other way. That happens. It doesn't creep me out or anything. It's totally normal. I mean, this is a weird profession. I'm dealing with bodies. The client is naked. I'm sure that makes them feel vulnerable. And I, in some ways, have all the power because I have clothes on. So they're completely vulnerable, completely naked, and I have clothes on and I'm massaging them with my feet. So yeah, there's, a power dynamic there. But this guy, though, he seemed to like need to adjust his dick a lot. And it just was, I was just starting to really notice it and like keep an eye on him and watch his every move. And I don't want to be in that state when I'm working. Normally like I'm not even thinking about that at all. I'm just like in the zone and working. But I found as I was working with this guy, I was always on edge. And every once in a while he would do something and I would think like, oh, is he being creepy or is he not being creepy? And it was never anything blatant. So I was always just left in this state of kind of trying to give him the benefit of the doubt, but also really keeping an eye on him and being on edge and never really being sure about him. And there was also something about his niceness that put me off. He was just slightly too nice. And I tend to be skeptical of people who are too nice. Certainly if they're really charming, that's a huge red flag. If anybody's too slick or too charming, I'm automatically skeptical of them. This guy wasn't like that, but he was just a little bit too friendly. And it didn't feel real. It felt like a tactic. So every time I saw him the day before the massage, he would send me a text message. He would say something like, I'm so looking forward to the deep, powerful massage tomorrow. And I was just like, dude, unnecessary. You don't need to say that, especially not every time. And then every time after the massage, thank you for the deep, powerful massage. You are so talented. I can't wait until our next appointment. And again, it was like nothing wrong with that, but it's just unnecessary and too much. And so much about this guy was just a general too muchness. So I didn't appreciate those text messages. And then there's this part of my thinking that kicks in that's like, he's just being friendly. Like, don't be a bitch. Like, you don't need to be on edge with this guy. You don't need to hate him. He's just being nice. Yeah, I mean, maybe it's not necessary, all the text messages, but he's not really threatening. He just appreciates the work. And the work that I do is unique and special. There's not a lot of people that do it. So sometimes I will get these massage clients who've never heard of barefoot massage before. They've never tried it. And I'll do an initial session and it blows their mind because it really is a special experience. It's really effective. It's way deeper than regular massage. A lot of people are really amazed when they discover it. And so it didn't seem that weird for him to text me that. So at some point, I'd already seen him 5 times. I had these kind of thoughts, keep an eye on this guy, be on guard with him. But also, basically, he seemed pretty harmless. He was organized and on time, which I appreciate. Not a flaky person. He was interested in regular, frequent massage. And so that's great. I need regular clients who appreciate my service and pay my full rate and show up on time. So kind of an ideal client all around. So he was scheduled to come for his 6th massage. And I got this text message from him and he said, I love the work we're doing together. The only thing that's missing for me is abdominal massage. I was just wondering if you do abdominal massage. My gut reaction was no fucking way am I going to rub this guy's tummy if he's going to be oohing and ahhing the whole time with his vocalizations. I am not doing that. Abdominal massage is appropriate in a lot of situations, and it can be really beneficial, and it's totally legitimate, and some massage therapists do it and some don't. I've done it before. There are cases where it's like totally appropriate and it's been fine. Like especially psoas work is really important for some people. But there have also been all of these times when creeps asked for that specifically. And I was just like, oh yeah, sure, abdominal massage, sure, yeah, I do that. I've done that before. We can give that a try. And then it turned creepy real fast. When this guy asked me that, I was just like, no, I don't do that. And I also referred him to someone I know who is enthusiastic about doing abdominal massage and visceral manipulation. And it happens to be a male therapist. So I thought, if this guy's being creepy or something, like I'll send him to a male therapist who loves to do that kind of work. Like that'll shut him up. Maybe he won't ask me again. Or maybe he legitimately is interested in abdominal massage and then he'll go see my colleague and whatever. Either way, I don't have to deal with it. So because I already just kind of wasn't sure about this guy, even though I had no specific reasons that I could point to, and because he asked me about the abdominal massage when he was coming for this most recent appointment, the 6th appointment, I was kind of nervous about it. Will I feel slightly creeped out again? Or like, is this guy just okay? This is the 6th time I've seen him, and he kind of seems like an ideal client in some ways, but there's also just something that still feels a little off. So I was a little bit nervous about the appointment. So he showed up and he's finally fully moved to this town. I'd seen him before when he was just visiting, and now he's really here, really settled in. And he mentioned that he wanted to set up a weekly time, like a regular time slot in the evening. He wanted to get all that figured out before the appointment started. So we were comparing our schedules and we picked a day of the week and a time to meet regularly. And so that was out of the way. And then we did the massage. So now in retrospect, I'm thinking he wanted to set up that regular appointment before because he knew that he was planning on ratcheting up the creepiness. And he wanted me to have fresh in my mind just how much money I would be leaving on the table if I kicked him out and refused to ever see him again. I feel like it was sort of a power thing. It was like a look at all this money you're going to get and, you know, getting a regular client, which is really valuable. It would have been like with the amount that he paid me and tipped me each time, it would have been $580 a month. So most of the massage was pretty normal, like pretty much like the other times that I've worked with him. But it was just like closer to the end that he got really, really creepy. And he was so creepy that close to the end, I stopped the massage like 3 minutes before the end of the massage. I use a countdown timer. So I just ended the massage and quickly walked over the countdown timer and cleared it so he wouldn't see that I stopped, 3 minutes short of 90 minutes. But I was just like, I can't do this anymore. At this point, I was so angry that I was starting to shake. So I really just couldn't do it. And when you're really angry at someone and you really hate someone, you cannot touch them in a nurturing, loving way. It's not possible. I was done. So yeah, that appointment was over a little bit early. So for the last 30 minutes of the appointment, he was face up and I was at first working on his legs, and I could see through the sheet that his dick was hard, which that had never happened before. But it's also kind of normal. It's a normal parasympathetic relaxation response, and it happens. And sometimes guys are kind of embarrassed about it, but it's just, it's normal. They're relaxed, so that happens. What is not normal is when the dick starts jumping around a whole bunch under the sheet, because when that happens, you know that they're perpetuating it with their mind and with their muscle control. They could change the subject in their mind and think about something not sexy and it would stop and go away. But that's not what this guy was doing. He was fully like thinking about whatever he had to think about to perpetuate that. Most guys they just think about something else and it goes away. And some of them are like probably even a little embarrassed by it. They just use their mind control and make it stop. So then the guy has his hand under the sheet and he's like cupping his junk. And I thought, well, like, oh, is he embarrassed? Is he trying to hide it? But it just didn't seem like it. Like there wasn't a bunch of movement, but it was just like, why do you need to touch your dick so much? Quit touching your dick. Like, not normal. Nobody does that. So I wasn't totally sure what was going on. He wasn't doing anything like blatantly terrible, but I was getting more and more annoyed. And I had this thought in my head, like, if he's not going to change the subject in his mind, then I'm going to do it. I'll just bust out with like, so tell me about your mother. That'll get it to go away. But I didn't do that. It's a very creative tactic. But like I said, freeze response. I didn't do that. I could have. But instead, I was just, feeling nervous, just wanting to get the whole thing over with and kind of freezing up and not being more assertive in trying to manage the situation. So then it was at the very end of the massage when I was massaging his neck that things got way, way worse. So he had his hand outside of the sheet, but he was kind of like rubbing his stomach, like really low, pushing into his stomach. It was not normal. He had never done it before, and it was very creepy. And then he suddenly like grabbed the sheet and just pushed it down really fast, like all the way to his pubic bone, like really low, not exposing himself, but it was just like the quickness of grabbing the sheet and pushing it down really fast. Almost like, he might have exposed himself, or making me wonder like what the fuck is going to happen next. This guy's making all these weird sudden movements. So then when he did that, when he pushed the sheet all the way down, then his dick is standing straight up under the sheet. And that's when I started to get really angry and my hands started to shake, and I just ended the session. And I was in total shutdown mode. Like, just get out of this situation, get this guy out of the door, and deal with him later. I'm not going to confront him right now. I would rather just get him out of here, and then I will email him later and tell him there's no way in hell I'm ever going to see him again. Afterwards, I was fuming. Like, I'm not outwardly expressing my anger, but I feel like anybody who is in the room with me would be able to see that I'm kind of shut down and fuming. When I get really angry like that, I'm not always good at like expressing it outward. Like, I won't yell at people or confront people, but I feel like the anger is so strong that it could act like a poltergeist. I feel like books are going to start flying off of the shelves and like mirrors are going to break because like I'm so angry. And he was kind of trying to chat with me. It's so cool how you massage the neck with your feet. Like, who would have thought that that was even possible? That's like amazing that you can do that. And I was just like, yeah, it's a combination using my feet and my hands. And like, I'm not making eye contact with him, and I just want to get him out of here. Surely he can tell how rattled I am. I don't think that anyone is stupid enough to not be able to see that. He knew he made me uncomfortable. And then he said, so we're on for next Tuesday? I was just like, yeah, sure, whatever. I just wanted him to leave. Like, yeah, I will agree to the next appointment that we already set up, but I know in my mind that I'm gonna send this guy a text message and never see him again. So I could have handled it better. In a way, my freeze response is not professional. The more professional thing to do, like right in that moment, say, get your hand off your dick right now or this session is over. There are other massage therapists that are more assertive and more direct that would have done that. Or they would have somehow made a joke about it. Maybe they would have said like, it's your dick. You can touch it whenever you want, just not when you're here. Like, you can do that at home. They would have made it funny or just somehow like been more graceful in the assertiveness. And I just freeze and don't feel comfortable confronting people. And I really wish that was different because I'm 47 years old. And so when I freeze like that, I feel like a child. I feel really vulnerable and like I am not dealing with the situation in a grown-up way. So it's not the most unprofessional way that I could have behaved, but it's also not the most professional. And the guy knew better. He's a counselor. So counselors take ethics and boundaries courses just like massage therapists do. It's required by law. So he 100% knew better. So yeah, that night, my nervous system was all messed up. I was distracted. I wasn't hungry, couldn't really eat dinner, and I didn't sleep very well. Like, I would fall asleep, but every time I woke up, I remembered this terrible situation. And then also remembering that I still have to write like a text message or an email to this guy and explain to him that I'm never going to see him again. And I don't know if like he's going to come back at me with some bullshit like, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to make you feel uncomfortable. That wasn't my intention at all. I was just, XYZ bullshit excuse. I didn't know if I was going to have to deal with that. So I was really stressed out about sending that message the next morning. But one kind of cool thing about that is that the next morning I was chatting with a friend back and forth explaining this terrible situation while I was also trying to craft this message. And I actually sent the text that I was considering sending to the client to my friend and said, what do you think about this? And then they sort of edited it and sent it back and made it better. And I was like, yeah, okay, that really is better. So then I sent the message to the guy, and it was really short. Basically, I'm ending our professional relationship, and in case you didn't know, it's not okay to touch your genitals during a massage. And there's no need for further communication on this matter. You know, short and simple and professional. The version that I wrote was a little bit punchier, and it had sort of a you should know better vibe. But, you know, when my friend rewrote it, he made it a little bit more concise and professional and, you know, not as like charged with anger. So then the whole time I'm chatting with him, I sent the message. And then even while I was still chatting with the friend, the client sent back a one-word response to me, and it just said, okay. So he's not going to push back at me with a whole bunch of bullshit excuses or try to explain his behavior or try to change my mind. It was just okay. So then it was all over. The really cool thing about it was that I was just chatting with a friend while I did this, which really distracted me. And I didn't even realize it until much later that evening that I'd totally forgotten about the whole incident. It was so stressful. It was really worrying me. And then at the end of the next evening, I was like, oh yeah, that's over. That was a really awful thing. And I did it, and it's over. And I also realized it was chatting with a friend while I was writing the message and sending it that made it so much easier. Because if I had been all by myself in a vacuum, I would have been like agonizing over the wording of the message and hesitating and whatever. But because I was sort of distracted by this other conversation with a friendly person who gets it and understands and is helping me craft the message, I just copy pasted it and sent it, and you know, without like agonizing over it too much. And then the whole thing was over. So it really felt like I had a friend in the room with me doing this difficult thing that made it so much easier. And now it's over, and I hope I never have to deal with that again.